Okay, we had some technical difficulties today, team. So we're trying to not be frustrated, but here we are. And we are super excited because today we are kicking off season 3 of the podcast, which means we have a new issue out of the magazine, and that is spring 2024. And so today for this episode, we're going to just talk about what's inside, what the theme of this season is, kind of why we picked this one, and the scripture that this issue is based around. And I really love this this issue and the way it turned out. It's absolutely beautiful. There's so many
really is.
Just really beautiful things to look at inside of this one. And so I'm really excited to talk about this one. How about you, Amy?
Yes, it turned out so pretty. There's just such good content in this one. I know we say that every time, but yeah, I really love several of the articles in this one, and it's gorgeous. Like
It is.
the
It's
pictures
such a
are
pretty one.
so pretty.
It's such a pretty
It
one.
makes me so excited as we sit here in like cold temperatures. It makes me excited for
I was just going to
spring
say
to
that
actually get here.
I know we're always excited for spring. It's always kind of this anticipation of spring.
Mhm.
And this one, so if you're new here and you have no idea what we're talking about, we are talking about Learning Well Journal. This is the magazine that we work hard on all year long. And every quarter we come out with a new issue, and it is based around a scripture, a verse in scripture, and then usually like a theme springboarded from that verse. And so that's where we start, and then we just kind of build the issue from there. And it is filled with everything under the umbrella of faith, family, home, and homeschool. And so if that interests you, then you would probably love to subscribe to this magazine, because I think it's really helpful. I think that there is something in here for everybody. If you are homeschooling teens, or if you're just getting started with homeschooling, there's something in here for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm a homeschooling teen, so I'm biased. I always like there to be things for parents with older kids. So anyway, for this issue of the magazine, this one is for spring 2024. We based this issue around wisdom. And the scripture that we based it around was Proverbs 14:1, which is, "The wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down." And I think that we're going to actually go into that scripture and, what it means and how we can apply it to our own homes in later episodes of the podcast. But we wrote about it extensively in this issue. And I think it's like part of the reason why we picked this is that, you look around in culture, and, there's a lot of, women blaming men blaming women for all of the issues. There's just a lot of battle of the sexes that has gone on for years and years and years. But, we believe that men and women are complementary, and that women have their own very important roles to play in their homes, and men as well. But we're women, so we're talking to women. And I think that we can get very defensive, like, what? Well, but men. Whereas, okay, not to say that all of those arguments are invalid, but I think that the best thing that we can do to start with things is to get better, to improve our families, is to look at what can we do better. And so I think one of the first things is to pray for wisdom and to be wise about how we conduct ourselves first in our homes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this a little bit. And then we're going to also just talk about some of the articles that are inside of this issue and why we're excited about them, and why, kind of why we included them in this issue. So, when we look at this scripture, Proverbs 14:1, about a wise woman building her home, something that I wrote in the letter from the editor in this issue, I think can be helpful as we, just go on about our day and thinking about why we do what we do as moms. And we can kind of get, especially right now as we're recording, we're kind of in the middle of winter, or well, it actually feels like the end of winter here. It's been very nice, but like you kind of get stuck in like the the doldrums of just everything is the same. What am I
Mhm.
even doing? Nothing feels super significant. But I wanted to bring that up because I think it is really important to note that mothers are always building. And so I want to read something along those lines. So reading from the letter from the editor, an excerpt, it says, as mothers, we are constantly building the lesson plans, the holiday festivities, the birthday parties, the next meal. We are builders. We create with our hands a legacy for our families. What a gift God has given to women in this way. Sometimes the weight of it is overwhelming. Like, how could I be trusted with such a task of building a home for these four precious souls? Four in my case. Um, God's plans are always best. He gave the mother a home to build, and he tasks the father to provide and protect what she built. Um, and so I think that we are wise to look at our roles as mothers in this way. Like we're building something really incredible for our family and a legacy that will um, go on and on forever with our kids. So, and to not kind of get stuck in the weeds of kind of this battle of the sexes of like what he's not doing and what I have to do and that kind of thing. So, um, that is kind of the crux of what this issue is about. Um, Again, it was just really, really fun to put together. We have a lot of great articles that pertain to the topic. So, Annie, do you want to, I don't know, just share some of the articles? And we're also going to talk about what's coming up for season 3 in the podcast and some of the articles that we're going to be kind of diving more into um, as we go on throughout this season.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole issue just has so many fun articles. But touching on some of the ones that we actually aren't going to delve into on the podcast, was kind of looking through it again this morning, and I was really excited about our day in the life contributor this year. This issue was Abby Stone, and she just I love I was reading through it again. You'd think by the time we get to this, by the time we've edited through all of this stuff so many times we'd remember, but I was reading through it again and I'm like, her perspective on things, I just love how she really places so much focus on making sure that she continues to do like a family style learning, even though she's got
Mm-hmm.
kids ranging from like 1 year to 15. And so
Mm-hmm.
she runs the whole gamut and she's still making it priority to have her family all together, at least at the beginning of the morning, which we talked about on the Learning Well Instagram account
Yeah,
or was it last week? I think it was last
I
week.
think it was last
Actually,
week. Yeah.
I think I shared a tip from your takeover, I don't know, maybe like last fall. Um, and yeah, just the importance of continuing to gather your older kids with the younger kids, especially to just start out your morning. And she really focuses on that here in her day in the life. So I loved that. I thought she did a great job and she's just encouraging and inspiring. And so that was a good one. I also really loved, you and I did an article on the nature table.
Yes, that was such a fun
Yes.
one.
Yeah, it was fun. This was like a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just both kind of wrote part of it. But yeah, I really love this because I think probably anybody with kids that goes out in nature, I feel like could relate to this. But my kids are always coming back with pockets full of outdoor things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so nice to have like a space, not for everything, but for kind of those special things. When I was thinking about this article this morning, I was realizing that behind me is ours.
Oh
if you're
Yeah.
watching. And we just have a shelf. It's just one shelf. Sometimes I wish it was bigger and maybe someday it will be. But it's just so fun to have a place to like, gather those special things and allow the kids to go back, time and time again and kind of, I don't know, touch and,
Right.
just really be able to relive whatever that experience was. And I don't
Right.
know.
And there's
So,
memories connected to them because we have our shelf is right over there. And
mhm.
I was in here the other day with Vera and she was like looking at it and just looking at some of the different things. And she grabbed this shell and she remembered when she got it. And
Mhm.
she like retold me the whole story of the day that she got it. Like
Yep.
there's just memories connected to that stuff, which is really
Yeah.
fun because it's also nature, which is beautiful. And it's something that God made and it connects our kids to nature,
Yeah.
which is all just so important. And
Yeah.
it just adds so much beauty and goodness to their lives and our lives as moms too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I wrote about this a little bit in the article, but in the 60s, nature tables were like a given thing in a classroom.
yeah.
So they always had a nature table where students could bring in things that they had found, and it was a great way to like reconnect them to the outside. Because
Mhm.
as we all know, when you're in public school, you're more often inside than you are out. And so, yes, it was just such a great. It was a great way for kids to be able again to touch and feel and relive and tell each other, like if somebody brought something in, they could explain, what this was and where they found it. And um, I think it's really cool that that's something that was it kind of was in every classroom back then. I don't know if there were never those when I was in school. I don't remember a nature table in any of my classrooms, I guess. But so I'm kind of guessing it still isn't probably something that most classrooms implement, but um, I think they should.
I think they totally should. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's really not hard at
No,
all. I mean,
no.
I think most of the stuff on our nature table, if not all, is either found in nature because it's a nature find,
Mm-hmm.
or it's a book,
Mm-hmm.
like a nature book.
Yep.
And it's pretty much everything else I got at a thrift store. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
go to the thrift store and look for, a wooden bowl, a wicker basket, small
Yep.
little things that would hold um shells or pine
Mm-hmm.
cones or whatever. And so you can do it very inexpensively. And
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly,
I would definitely do that if I was a teacher in a
yeah,
school.
I mean, it just provides so much conversation, in my opinion.
Right.
We just recently dissected owl pellets, which we've done. I feel like you're not a
It's a rite
homeschooler
of
till you
passage.
it is a
Yeah.
rite of passage. And we've done it several times. We've found them out in nature and dissected them. And we've also ordered them, for those usually in the winter. I'll pick up some and it's just a fun activity. But we currently have mouse bones bleaching right now to add to our our nature shelf. So
It is so cool
anyway,
though when you do dissect those, you can put the
yeah.
whole skeleton back together, which is crazy.
It is crazy, absolutely crazy. So anyway, it was a neat article. This article has been on our list of like potential
Mm-hmm.
articles for a couple years probably.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, we've kind of passed over it for, in lieu of other articles, but we finally added it and I'm so glad we did because it's just a fun addition. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that one I also uh I don't know if this is tacky. This is the one I wrote, but I mean,
I
I
love this
really am
article.
like, I love this article, but honestly, it's just something that I'm like super passionate about. But I wrote an article about cultivating resilient faith in your teenagers, and
Yes.
I have just been passionate about this for years and years and years. I've been involved with high school kids for like 23 years now in some
Mm-hmm.
way or another. My husband was a youth pastor for several years. I was a cheerleading coach. My husband did, he was a public school teacher, high school teacher for years. And so we had a lot of connection with kids that way. And I just always am drawn to that age. But this article is all about really finding ways to, well, it kind of stemmed from this study that I had read years ago about how they're finding that kids whose faith really sticks once they're out of the home into college, entering those early years of adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
are kids who had pretty significant adult connection in their teenage years. So obviously, like, that's first and foremost good parenting, parents that are involved, having conversations, all of those things, but also different adults in their lives that they just had connection with, not just
Right.
passing people, but actually took interest in their life. And so both my husband and I have always been tried to be that for other kids that we've, had something more than just a passing, like, hey, I know who you are, I know who your parents are. When
Right.
when when kids that have a closer connection have come into our lives, we have worked to try and be that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just have always been super passionate about that. And so I really love this article. Was fun to write and kind of be able to, I guess I've never really thought about like how to put that down on paper, what that looks
Right.
like, but I think it came together
Right.
really well. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I wanted you to write this article because so let's talk about this for a second because you told me about that article a long, long time ago,
mhm,
but it really just kind of solidified what I already was kind of seeing take shape
mhm,
in life, which is just like when you have another reinforcing voice that's just kind of echoing what the parents are already saying in a
mhm,
teenager's life, it it does seem to connect a lot of dots for them.
mhm,
So if you have a kid where you're like, you have rules set up, right, around their phones or around what they watch or around what they do in their free time or how they dress or
mhm,
whatever all the rules are in your house, or just the standard that you've set, um the 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 faith that you've tried to teach them, and all of the biblical worldview that you've tried to teach them, all the things.
mhm,
um when you then have another one or two uh adults in their life that are saying the same exact thing as the parents, it's like, oh, okay, like you can kind of
mhm,
just see that they're like, "Ooh, okay, it's not just my mom who's,
mhm.
kind of crazy, but other people think this too."
Right.
Um, and you then told me about that article, and then this has been quite a while ago. We talked about, would you want to just kind of like be that person with my
Mhm,
daughter? And
mhm,
so for the last, I don't know how long, you and Sophie have been like talking on the phone and reading books together and then discussing them over FaceTime
mhm,
or whatever. And I
mhm,
think that that has been a really cool thing for
mhm,
for Sophia because for one, she's reading things that maybe she wouldn't have otherwise read. And she's having conversations with another adult that, I think is just reinforcing everything that she's being taught at home.
mhm,
Um, and, I just think it helps to give them a well-rounded view of, just other, I don't know, viewpoints isn't the right word because we really have like very similar viewpoints, but they're, she's just hearing another voice speaking
yeah.
truth into her life, which I think is just such a cool thing and so important for our kids. Just
Mhm,
reinforcement, I
mhm,
think. And so um I wanted you to write this article, I think, because if you can find a person like this for your teenager, or if you can be that person for, your friends' kids,
mhm,
um, it's just such a cool thing, and also just such a fantastic way that the body of Christ kind of works
mhm,
together to, just back each other up and really just be brothers and sisters, which I think
Mhm.
is really, really amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, I want to say it's sad. It just seems very textbook to me that like teenagers can get to a point where their parents have said something a
Yeah.
million times, and it's not that it's not like an indication of them being like disobedient or disrespectful and not wanting to, accept or fully understand what their parents are saying, but it's like it's their parents, and
Right.
to have somebody else that they have built relationship with that as the parent is going they're going to steer them in the exact same direction that you would. But for some reason, coming from somebody else, you're right. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay. It's maybe it's
Yeah.
not just my parents or whatever. Or sometimes it's
Yeah.
just exactly they've been hearing it from, their parents over and over and over and over again, and they're sick of it. And to hear it
Right.
from somebody else, all of a sudden it clicks. And it's like, as a parent, you can look at that and be like, that's so irritating. Like, why do they do that? But it feels very textbook to me. Like, this is
Hmm.
just kind of how teenagers are.
Right.
And so having that influence is so good, but it also, I remember because after like I said, I read this article about, you know, adult connection in teenagers years ago, probably 10 years ago. And um, after reading it, I really was like, it made me reflect on my own teenage years and also Aaron's, because we obviously both had a faith that stuck,
Right.
like we did not wander. Not that we didn't have, I mean, I had plenty of years of like some rebellion and just some areas where I messed up,
Yeah.
but I never like I never was like, oh, I don't have a faith anymore. I never walked
Right.
away ever. In thinking about back to my own teenage years, I thought, did I have that kind of connection with other adults? And I really did. I was super involved in my youth group. And so I had really good connection with my youth pastors. Um, my parents had, great godly Christian friends that I felt connection to as well. I even looked at, and I think I wrote in here about like intergenerational, like
Hmm.
the older women in my church, they knew me by name. They were not just like coming to church and leaving. They were the women that did all the things in our church. They
Hmm.
brought the meals to people. They set up our get-togethers. They were involved in everything, and they knew me by name, and they knew the things that I liked to do, the things that I was involved in, and they asked me questions, and I had relationship with them. And I think it's so important because it gives a kid, aside from just their parents, they can look at adults that have a faith, and
Hmm.
it's almost like they look at them like that's a faith worth sticking out. Like
Hmm.
I see their lives now and I see the kind of lives that they're living, and that that feels like, yes, that's worth sticking through this.
Right.
So I don't know. It just, I think it's so important to have that connection. And I mean, we lack connection as a
Right.
society greatly. So finding that for your kids, and I know it can be really hard, but like getting involved in a church that is teaching, biblically based, good teaching,
Right.
and then just getting involved with the people there, whether there's an adult there that maybe has a skill or a hobby that you think your kid might enjoy that you could, pass them off to once a week or a couple times a
Right.
month, once a month, even like, hey, my husband's a woodworker. So I always think that, maybe there's a kid who is really interested in that. And once a month they could meet up and, show them some skills. And I don't know, it's important. And I think we a lot of times have to be really intentional about making those connections for our kids, because I think it's really uncommon for kids to be like, I want to, I want to
Right.
hang out with that adult, but like almost like a forcing, not in like a bad way, but um I'm not
Hmm.
sure if Sophia would have ever come to me and been like, hey, could we read some books together and then I'll call you? And I don't know. But instead you were like, hey, this is what
Right.
I'm thinking. Would you want to do that? And she's like, sure. And it's been
Right.
so fun, and it has been great. Like, and you know, it takes longer. You really do have to build relationship with them, and we're far away from each other. So our only way of doing that is like through the phone, you know, talking here and there. But then once you have that relationship with them, you get glimpses into areas that you might be able to speak into, or, you know, like I ask her often, you know, what can I pray for you for this week? What are some things that you know, that you're facing that you need prayer for? And they're just, you know, little things, but it's good. Like kids
Hmm.
need that from people other than their parents. They already know their parents are praying for them, right?
Hmm.
So,
Well, and I think like what you were saying with, their parents just start to kind of like, it just becomes kind of like white noise, right? Like I
yeah.
always picture the teacher on Charlie Brown, the
Yeah.
wah 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 wah.
Yes.
Like it does sound, you're with, especially homeschool kids, you're with your parents all the time. And so you're like,
Yes.
I've heard this so many times from my mother.
Hmm.
Um, that it does start to just get, I mean, I remember it actually. I
Hmm.
remember my mom, and only like, as an adult, I was thinking, oh my gosh, my mom has said this for years and she was
Yeah.
actually right, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Ugh. So
Oops.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know people will want to know what books that you guys have read together. Do you know,
Oh,
can you think of some of them? Because there has been some really good ones.
I should. We just read Speechless by Michael Knowles,
Yeah.
all about the politically correct movement. So I sometimes I let her choose. Sometimes, I mean, I've contacted you and said, is there anything that you're really wanting her to read that just, you know, doesn't fit in with
Right.
curriculum or whatever? Um, so sometimes it's political, which has been great because it's sparked a lot of really good conversations about our, you know, current political culture. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's faith-based. We have talked about and haven't delved into it yet, but there's a book, I think it's called Eating to Extinction, which is all about just different foods that have basically they are kind of like building blocks to like life sustaining, that have we basically don't eat them anymore, and how detrimental it's been to our bodies. It's a huge book. And so I think every time
That
we
sounds
like
good.
I know every time we send like, you know, we're ready for a new book, and like I'll send her 5 or 6 and we're always like, should we? I don't know. It's so huge. But it looks good. So it can be, you know, something like that. We're currently reading what is that called? About the North Korean gal who,
Yes. It's about a girl that she escaped from North Korea, right?
yep, yep. And I knew I was gonna forget it.
Uh
Sophia's loving it. It's a good one. Um,
what
okay,
was
it's
her
called In
name?
Order to Live.
Okay.
I don't know. It's called In Order to Live, a North Korean girl's journey to freedom. I keep saying Yeonmi,
Okay.
Yeonmi Park. But yeah, it's all about her growing up in North Korea, which is fascinating.
Right.
Her escape from North Korea and her now life here. So um, yeah, that has prompted lots of conversations about you know, communist
Yeah.
government, about brainwashing, like what brainwashing does to people. Um, yeah, so it's just we kind of, I don't know. I sometimes
You
she
read
has one that,
12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You.
oh yes, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
That one was super convicting. We read Allie Beth Stuckey's
Oh yeah. Yep.
You're Not Enough.
You're Not Enough and That's Okay.
Yep. Um, yeah,
I was just gonna go look at Goodreads.
I know that's what I'm into. Um,
I just, sorry to put you on the spot, but I
that's
know
okay.
that people always like to know. I mean, maybe when I'm saying people, I mean Alicia. I'm always
Well,
like,
and
wait,
we've
what was the
even,
book?
yeah, we've even talked about reading, because Sophia likes to read, so she's
Yeah,
reading all kinds of things, but we've even talked about just reading like a novel together and
right.
like chatting about it, you know. That one doesn't like, because we usually pick, depending on how long the chapters are, we'll pick, 3 to 5. I think we've been doing 5 in this one because the chapters are kind of short. And
Okay.
then we call on the phone, like old school.
Mhm.
We don't even FaceTime. We just talk on the phone, which I kind of love. It's fun.
I know.
Um, and yeah, once a week. And then we just discuss, what we read and, pick what we're going to read for the next week as far as how many chapters. And yeah, kind of talk a little personal and what our weeks look like. And yeah, it's fun. It's a really fun deal. So yeah, I think it's a great way to just kind of establish some,
Mhm.
some connection with kids. And my husband actually just uh suggested a book, the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Is that what it's called? You
Oh
know that
yeah,
one?
what is that book?
Well, it's
Why
more
does it
like
sound familiar?
I mean it's a famous book. But he had suggested it's more about like basically, I don't want to say investment, but just here, let me pull it up.
Okay. I feel like we have that book, or I've seen it on our
Yeah.
shelves, or somebody had it in this house.
Okay, so the description on Goodreads says it's the author's story of growing up with two dads, not what you think, his real father and the father of his best friend, his rich dad,
Okay.
and the ways in which both men shaped his thoughts about money and investing. So
Oh, interesting.
um, it says the book explodes the myth that you need to earn a high income to be rich and explains the difference between working for money and having your money work for you. And Aaron, like, very much believes that every young boy should be reading this book. So he had suggested it to one of the boys in our church, and the kid was like, "Oh yeah," like didn't really want to read it. And Aaron said, "Pick it up and read it, and we'll sit and discuss it." And his mom ordered it that day. So,
Oh,
um,
funny.
yeah, sometimes it's just nice to have. And as a parent, I feel like if you've
Mm.
got another adult that you trust that's offering that, like especially as a homeschool parent, isn't that such a blessing? Because
Well,
I
it
feel
is.
like so
Yeah.
many books you're reading and so much of the conversation you're the one steering, and it's just nice to have somebody that you trust doing that as well.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a book necessarily. I think the point is to just, if you can be that person for another teenager,
Hmm.
or somebody else can be that person for your own teenager, uh it just, it's just another good reinforcement. And you could connect over books, you could connect over a common interest, like you're saying, woodworking, you
Hmm.
know uh, many different things that you could connect over.
Yep.
You could just have lunch once in a while if you're in the same community.
Hmm.
If not, books is a great way, because then you can just talk about them over the phone. But
Yep.
I love the whole concept. And so um, I hope it's helpful for somebody else out
Hmm.
there that just,
Yeah.
maybe needs a little bit of, just backup with their teenagers,
Yes.
because it's always nice, because they do kind of shut down after a certain
Hmm.
point. They're kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
mom.
And it's like this article, I feel like it's twofold. It's like helping you to see the need for that in your own kids' lives, but also
Mhm.
for me, I always felt like, any place that we've planted, and we have kind of we have not been in the same place for our entire married life.
Right.
We have moved a few times, and I feel like wherever we plant, I always think, how can I be that? In what ways can I be that for someone else? Like in
Mhm.
what ways can I put myself out there to be available? I mean, obviously, like my kids are my first priority, but I have time. I have
Right.
time to invest in one or two other kids as well. And so, yeah, this is kind of a thing I've been passionate about for a long time. So that was a fun article. And
Mhm.
then the last one that I was going to bring up, and it just like, we're not talking about it later in the podcast, but we cannot not talk about it because it like literally is the cover of this issue, is your friend that wrote this article on the beauty of gardening. And
Mhm.
there's practical tips for a home garden. And it is not just stunning to look at, but her words when I was editing it. I mean, I did not have to edit it heavily. She's an excellent writer, and it's just her words are really impactful and practical. Like the tips that she shared are great, and it's really beautiful. But I was gonna just read, and these aren't her words. She was quoting from a book, and I was gonna read the very end because it just kind of makes me cry every time I read it. But it's from The Hidden Art of Homemaking by Edith Schaefer. Says in there that she encourages us to take seriously the beauty we create around us. A Christian who realizes he has been made in the image of the Creator and is therefore meant to be creative on a finite level should certainly have more understanding of his responsibility to treat God's creation with sensitivity, and should develop his talents to do something to beautify his little spot on the world's surface. Neighbors, friends, and strangers walking by ought to find the Christian's gardens, farms, estates, schools, hospitals, huts, missions, and factories surrounded by beauty of grass, moss, rocks, fern, bushes, trees, flowers, and vegetables, planted and cared for with an expression of originality and artistic planning on some scale. It should blossom into a place of beauty, demonstrating something of the wonder of the one who made plant life to produce seeds in the first place. Christians should have more beautiful gardens. So beautiful.
I know. I know. Okay, so there's so many things with that. So
I know.
everybody should buy and read and reread The Hidden Art of Homemaking by Edith Schaefer, because
Yeah,
the whole book
it's
is
good.
just pure gold. But also Elizabeth is a friend and a neighbor, and so I asked her to write this article because she does have a beautiful garden, and because she truly does live that quote out so well in her life. And so she she is a beautiful writer and she has a beautiful garden. But this quote, I just feel like it just so encapsulates what I know Elizabeth does. I know you do. I know that we try to do this with the magazine, what I try to do in my own life. Like, beauty is God's, right? Like, God created beautiful things. Like, I always think about this. He could have had one flower, he could have had one color. We could all be colorblind, or
Yeah.
just not see color, and that's just the way the world is. Not even colorblind, it's just there are no colors, right? Everything could be just black and white. But when you just think about what an artist God is, it does just, I don't know, give me like a passion to create kind of my own mini, paradise of sorts in my own little corner, right? Outside in my
Right.
yard, or in, my kitchen, or creating the next meal or whatever. And so I just think like it's such a beautiful way to just look at life in general. It's not just even stopping at a garden, but um yeah, I just absolutely love that quote. It
Yeah.
makes me want to reread that book again. But
Yeah.
it's very practical. It's a very practical article, but again, she weaves in uh lots of different quotes from books and old gardening books, and uh different just, picture books that talk about gardening. She weaves all of that in throughout the article. It's so well written.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, how
It's,
can we have Elizabeth write about more stuff? Let's do
I
that.
know.
So
I know. Yeah.
um
She did great.
anyway, and we had such a fun photo shoot. We went over there uh at the end of the season. It was like maybe the end of August, and she was like, oh, my garden is not very pretty right now, it's all overgrown. And I'm like, nope, it's gorgeous, it's
Looks
gonna be
gorgeous.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so she has 4 kids. She has one son and 3 daughters, and so her 3 daughters came out and kind of did this fun little photo shoot with us. And they were just working in their garden, and went over there and took pictures, and it was just such a beautiful beautiful night. But yeah, and that is this is from our photo shoot, the cover. That's her youngest on the cover. So
Yeah.
super fun night.
So good.
Loved that article.
Yeah.
So I think that we have so many more from this issue that we're going to dive more into. throughout this season of the podcast. And I'll just like tease them real quick, a few of them. Okay, because there's like, as I look down the list here, I'm like, oh, there's so many more that we could talk about.
I know.
Like there's handmade gifts for Mother's Day. Regina Gibson did an excellent article on
Oh,
serving your husband,
yes.
which is just such a beautiful way to build your home. And I loved that article that she did.
Yep.
We have 2 unit studies in this one, actually. One on, well, I don't know. Do we want to like say everything? But
I don't
one
know.
on like a book on gardening, which is really, really cute. And then another one on just a really good like spring
Spring.
topic.
Yeah.
Um, oh,
Your
there's
article about the memory boxes.
yes. So
So fun.
we did that's another one that's been on the list for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote an article on how I preserve my kids' like baby stuff, and just their when they were really little, like how I've kind of just preserved their little sentimental things,
Mm-hmm.
um, and in a way that is really fun for them to just kind of pour over and look through and
Mm-hmm.
just remember and reminisce. Um, oh, and then the we always have a section on a recipe section, and this one was on rhubarb, which was a really fun article to write.
Yes.
Um, but there are a few articles that we are going to go through and dive into deeper. We're going to talk about trades versus college and what a durable trade is. We have a really good
Mhm.
article on that. Um, we're also going to dive into what it actually means, like how we can apply the verse Proverbs 14:1 in building our home versus tearing our home down.
Mhm.
Um, what else am I forgetting, Annie?
We're going to talk about the Liz Enzer's article,
Oh,
the
yes.
Pursuing Wisdom,
Yes.
which will
So,
be
yes.
good.
So pursuing wisdom as a mother, um, and
Like
where,
finding other,
yes,
yeah, finding
finding
other
other moms
moms.
to glean wisdom from.
Hmm.
And oh,
We're
and we're going to
gonna,
talk about Shakespeare.
yes,
Is that what you
yes.
were going to just say?
Yep, Shakespeare. And then we
Okay.
also, we have scheduled, we were gonna do an episode all about last day of school traditions
Oh, that's right.
as
Okay.
well. So yeah.
So many fun ones coming up. This art or this issue is absolutely chock full of fun stuff.
Mhm.
So, I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it. The last day to order or to subscribe and get it will be February 9th. So make sure you subscribe before then. If not, there are sometimes um, back issues left over in the shop that you can snag in there, but we tell people to never rely on that because sometimes
Yeah,
there are none or just like 3.
right.
So yeah, so try to subscribe and so you can get that issue before the cutoff there. So but before we go, we like to end every issue or every episode with what's on our currently list, something we're reading, something we're doing, something we're watching, whatever. And so today we're talking about something that we're buying. So
Mhm.
Annie, what is something that you're buying right now?
Well, it's been kind of a long process, but I'm still in the middle of it. So I have been working really hard at replacing all of my makeup and skincare with clean
Okay.
products. Um, I am not like I don't know, a makeup guru. I have no expertise in makeup whatsoever. I have literally bought like drugstore makeup my entire life. And so I'm working on just trying to like revamp that a little bit. And so with the makeup, I'll let everyone know I have been using Saint makeup, which is it's
Okay.
spelled Seint. And my friend sells it, so it's not in stores.
I've never heard of
Um,
it.
I hadn't either. And um, my mom actually started using it from her, and she's like, I really like it. I think you should try it out. And so I did. It's not overly expensive. I feel like it's really good priced, great ingredients, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like it a lot. So I feel good on that on that front, I guess. But
Okay.
the skincare issue is still like just such a thing for me.
Right.
I have tried a few that I just I haven't liked that much. And then I'm kind of just in that, like, I feel like with hormonal changes at my age, I'm needing something that's like a little bit more powerful than just, I don't know, than just a cleanser, I guess. But
Right.
um, I have been using like a charcoal
Mhm.
bar that I really feel like is good, and that has been helpful. But I tried out recently. I won't say the company because it doesn't matter. They're a great company. It just didn't work for me. But it was like an oil cleanser and also like a bar, like a moisturizing bar, and it's straight like I don't know the word to say. Like it wrecked my face in a way that like I can't really
Oh no.
not like I broke out or something. It like burned my skin. And
Oh.
I used it for like, I don't know, probably a month and a half. And I kept feeling like this kind of burning, especially like around my eyes. Like in that
Oh.
skin is so thin and sensitive, and I kept thinking it was the makeup. So I took 2 months of like backing off that new makeup, and that wasn't helping. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I think it's the actual skincare that I'm using. And it hurt so bad. I was like, what is going on here? So I've totally stopped that. And it's all natural stuff. It's just some ingredient was not agreeing with my skin.
Oh.
So I stopped that, and now I'm kind of on the hunt again. And I don't necessarily know what ingredient it was in there that was doing that. So yeah, I'm like, what bothers me is that there's a few different companies I'd like to try, but I feel frustrated that like these skincare companies, like, could you like sell a set that's like all travel size? Like, I don't want to buy
Mhm.
full size products to find out something might or might not work, or I just don't like it, or I can be kind of picky about smell, like if it's going to
Yeah.
sit on my face, I don't want to smell something I don't so, but I feel like those are hard to find. It's kind of hard to find companies that offer them in smaller sizes or like sample sizes to purchase. So I just don't buy anything and use a bar of goat milk soap, which also
Oh.
is fine. But I just feel like with my age, I would like something else. So
As
that's
far
what I'm doing.
like something else as far as like a cleanser or a moisturizer.
Both. Like
Okay.
I would like, yeah, I would like a set that's like cleanser, possibly a toner, and a moisturizer. That's like
Okay.
good ingredients. And so like I've thought about like Toups and Co. But again, like they're expensive, and I'm happy to pay that price if it works and I like it, but I
Right.
just would prefer to like start out really small so that I'm
Right.
not,
Like,
because you can't usually. And so like here I have these bottles of stuff that are great products that someone else might totally love, but I can't use them. And I spent, upwards of $100 getting these three products, and so I think it's kind of paralyzed me
yeah, you
from
need some
trying something
samples to try
else.
something
Yeah.
out. So you can try
Yeah.
it for like a good week and see what
Yes.
it's gonna. But actually, that is such a good tip. And this is something my mom, again, probably said a million times. And I was like, oh, mom. But then I was like, no, she's right. If you have like some weird itching rash, like something like is making you feel, off, like there's
Hmm.
something going on, always ask, like, what have I changed? Like, what new thing am
Yes.
I using? New lotion, new makeup, new
Hmm.
fragrance, new laundry soap,
Yep.
whatever. Cause it's usually like,
Something
that's
like that.
usually the culprit. Like, you probably
Yep.
changed something. But that
Yeah.
is frustrating because it's like a really expensive
Yeah.
trial and error.
I know. And yeah, and more so expensive because you're buying stuff that is cleaner ingredients, which is always more expensive.
Mhm.
So it's not like I'm just, buying a 15 or $20 bottle of the best moisturizer the drugstore has. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah. guess if you have any great ideas. They're probably all the ones that I already need to try anyway, like Tubes and Co. I think there was another one I was looking at. In fact, the place that I have been getting my makeup from, I noticed they have skincare. So I was going to contact the gal that, you know, sells me the makeup and ask her if she uses their skincare too. So maybe I'll do that. But again, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to buy full-size bottles of things if it's not going to work, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So
Well, and
that's what I've been buying.
this is why like Bobbi Brown gets you, because I've used their makeup for years and years,
Hmm.
and they are so, I don't know if generous is the right word, because I'm like, yeah, I see what you're doing here. In every order, you get so many samples that
Mm,
then you're like, oh, and their stuff is really good. So then you start using the samples and you're like, okay, I have
yes.
to have this because
Gotta
this is
have
like,
that.
it
Yeah.
works so well. And so I
Yeah.
use their moisturizer in the day. And then at night, I've started just, now that it's winter, my skin is way more dry.
Mhm.
So I just use, I kind of make my own like moisturizing oil for
Mhm.
nighttime. And I just use that at night. It's like
Yeah.
frankincense, jojoba oil, lavender, maybe
Okay.
geranium, I think. Yeah. It's like three
Nice.
oils and then jojoba. And that
Yeah.
seems to work pretty good.
Yeah. And
But I can't,
maybe that is what I need to look at too, is maybe, you know, making something of my own that would be at least for a moisturizer type
yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, good luck with
what are
that.
you buying? Yeah, thank
What
you.
am I buying? Okay. So this is weird, but I I love books, as we all do, but I feel like I was so inspired when we went to Miss Bonnie's house last summer.
Mhm.
So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you may have heard us talk about Miss Bonnie. Miss Bonnie is a local lady to me, and she has been collecting books for probably decades, probably
Mhm.
many decades. And she has converted her garage into kind of a used book store. And so you can call her, make an appointment, and she will open her store for you.
Mhm.
And pretty much everything in her bookstore is something that would be considered a classic, a living book, really just rich literature. There's nothing, there's no I'm trying to think of something stupid. Like there's no Tinkerbell paperback
Babysitter's Club.
Babysitter's Club. No,
Yeah.
like that's
No.
not in there. Uh and in her own personal collection, which she also will show you, is that she has um what do they call it? First editions of so
Mhm.
many of like these favorite books that I personally love as a homeschool mom, like Genevieve Foster,
Mhm.
Opal Wheeler, most of the books that would come in like a Beautiful Feet book pack.
Mhm.
She has like first editions of all of those, or at least like first or second. So it's like the real hardback vintage versions of these books.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with having the reprints of the paperback version, but if you can get the first edition or second
Mhm.
edition hardback, um, kind of original printing of these books, um, I guess basically what I'm trying to say is I want to have a library like Miss Bonnie, and I'm working to just replace some of the books that I have with the hardback version.
Yeah.
So I have like I'm trying to think. Call It Courage, which I can't think of the author right now, Adam of the Road, uh, the Genevieve Foster series, Abraham Lincoln's World, George Washington's World, John Smith's World, like those books.
Mhm.
Um, I've just been working towards, if I see them when
Mhm.
I'm out and about, or I follow a couple of gals on Instagram that sell used and vintage books, I'll just pick one up to replace what I have. And then I'll just take the original copy that I had, the paperback, and I'll just pass that on to somebody that doesn't have that one.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's what I'm buying. Just more books, you know.
Mhm. Yes.
Um,
It's the plight of every homeschool mom, I feel like.
yeah,
All the books. I've been keeping, and maybe this isn't, I don't know, but I do that too here and there, is I'll replace, or sometimes if I'm at a thrift store and I find a copy of a
yeah,
book, that I already have, but I'm like, I always get like bummed out. Like when I see a book that we love that I already own, I'm like, man, I wish I didn't own that and that I hadn't read it and that I was just finding it for the first time and like, oh,
yeah,
cool. But even if they're paperback, I have been picking them up because I really want to. My kids can replace them later with their own nice hardback copies, but I want to be able to send my kids with a set of like our favorite books, So when I find like the Little House books, even if they're
yeah,
paperback, if they're in decent enough condition, I'll pick them up, and I've just been setting them aside so that I can one day like send several books that were our favorites, that hopefully they can use as well. So, even if you don't have, like, that's one way you could also pass it on, is kind of
right.
keeping them.
And I do think like
So.
some of these older books, when they are reprinted, they're getting edited.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I really don't like that. And
Mm-mm.
so like they have reprinted a lot of Roald Dahl uh with like sensitivity warnings, or they've just changed words, which if you've read Roald Dahl, like that is the author that he was. I mean, he was
Yes.
just kind of harsh and crass in some ways, and
Yes.
that's part of his that's part of his brand. That's part of who he
Yeah.
was as a writer. And so oh, Lois Lowry is another one.
Mhm.
Picture books too. It's not just like kind of the reading novels or whatever, but
Mhm.
just I like to have those original copies because then they're in their original form and they haven't
Yeah.
been messed with at all. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm just working towards just kind of um just vintageifying my
Yeah.
library.
Yes. I love
So
it.
yeah, so that's what I'm
It's
buying.
wonderful.
More books,
So fun.
books.
Yes.
So, all right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in today and just checking out the conversation. Welcome to season 3 of the Learning Well podcast. I hope that the rest of it will be enjoyable for you. And just remember, as you're going throughout your week, throughout your day, to just do the next right thing. All right, we'll see you next week.